This is Agent McKayla Kespar, September 17, 2018, 9:31 a.m. Reopening case file 79-KC-7986. Disappearances on E50. This case was brought to my attention as part of the following email. To Kespar Michaela, from Belle G. This crossed my desk on the way to processing. Seemed up your alley. You did so well on the Camelback murders, I'd like to see what you can make of this. Some kids went missing in Missouri, and I think the locals spooked the agents. Take a look and see what you can find. Oh, and come up out of the hole every once in a while. They miss you in OpTech. Associate Executive Assistant Director Gideon Bell. Attached, case file 79-KC-7986. A cursory glance at the case file reveals very little information. As of this recording, it's only a few years old. Too old to collect any new physical evidence, not old enough to find a person with a guilty conscience wanting to get something off their chest. Here's the basic report. Case number 79-KC-7986. Disappearances on E50. Incident date, May 1st, 2015. Character of case, unexplained phenomenon, missing persons. Synopsis of facts. 3 local teenagers, Jesse Howard, Annabelle Stevens, and Ryan Bates, went out to a spot locally known as the Spook Light, a local legend of mysterious lights that haunt a stretch of country road. The 3 took separate cars and had set up at different roads to investigate any paranormal activity they may encounter. All 3 of them were said to have left their homes around 9 p.m. The last known contact from any of them was a text message Annabelle Stevens sent to a friend at 10:27 p.m. 2 of the 3 cars have turned up since in different fields in various states of destruction. Interviews with locals not particularly fruitful. Reference: Report of Special Agent Michelle Sanchez, Kansas City, Missouri, dated May 26, 2015. Location: Joplin, Missouri. I was instructed to come to town and investigate the disappearance of 3 teenagers by assignment of the special agent in charge and the Kansas City field office. My partner and I came to the area on May 19, 2015, and met up with the local sheriff's department. There we were given further detail on what they knew leading up to the teens going missing. This report reads like the first case an agent has command of. We. Too much desire to be both formal and insert self-importance. Reminder to look into the case history of Michelle Sanchez. If this is her first case, she may have missed something. Jesse Howard, Annabelle Stevens, and Ryan Bates were working on a school project about a local legend in the area known as the Hornet Spook Light. They all left their homes at roughly 9 p.m. on Friday, May 8, 2015, with recording equipment stating they would be at 3 different locations where it was rumored that the spook light was often spotted. One of them, Jesse Howard, on E50, colloquially known as Spooklight Road, where sightings are most often reported. Annabelle Stevens was set up on E40, which is an unpaved gravel road with a dead end. Ryan Bates and his equipment were further away on South 660 at another site known as Hoffman's Mansion, which appears to just be a mostly open field with the remnants of a caretaker's shed and a small family cemetery on site. This is at least what they reported to teachers and parents prior to setting out that evening. The last recorded contact anybody had with the missing teenagers was a text message sent from Annabelle Stevens at 10:27 p.m. to a friend which reads, "Hearing weird noises coming from the woods. Totally creeped out RN. Feels like somebody's watching me." After speaking with the sheriff's office and reviewing their reports, we set out to investigate the areas the missing teens were last reported to be. As previously stated, they all mostly appear to be farmland or wooded areas. Nothing particularly of note except for the small, interesting landmarks at Hoffman's Mansion. All 3 areas do have houses of varying quality spread out around them in a haphazard fashion. This concluded our first day of investigation, but we revisited the area that night and found nothing of particular interest with almost no light to see to collect evidence even if it were there. Day 2 was spent conducting interviews with the locals and was at least more interesting. Agent Nash and I opted to split up for this portion of our investigation in order to cover more ground. My first interview was with Bill Harris at his trailer, just a quarter mile from the spot where Jesse Howard was parked at the time of her disappearance. Mr. Harris claims he did not see or hear anything out of the ordinary on that night, But when I prompted no screaming, gunshots, or other sounds that would indicate distress, he made a point of letting me know that such sounds are not unusual, and as far as he's concerned, yelling and gunshots is just the way things are out here, and it ain't my business or yours, but refused to elaborate any further. After making a prompt exit from the home of Bill Harris, I went about a half-mile further down the road and spoke to Julie and Francis Bailey. The Baileys were disturbed about the news regarding the missing teenagers. Mrs. Bailey said that she's, quote, just sick over this unpleasantness. I asked the Baileys the same questions about unusual sights and sounds, and Mr. Bailey explained that often teenagers come out to the area and make a ruckus at all hours of the night, and it's never a big deal, just kids being kids. At this point, it was Julie Bailey who spoke up, explaining that most of the time that is the case, but there are things that happen and that's just the way things is. Weren't nothing that the folks around here could do to change that. I encouraged her to keep going, but Francis cut her off, stating that his wife likely means petty theft and drug use, that, while unfortunate, are not life-threatening. I asked Mrs. Bailey again what she meant, and she quickly rushed out. The corn. It wants what it wants, and none of us can do anything except let it take. The new sheriff just doesn't understand yet to leave it alone. At this time, Mr. Bailey simply said his wife's name in a way that raised my hackles. She looked at him, exasperated, and then got up and then went upstairs. He informed me his wife wasn't well, and that even with the new medicine, sometimes she still didn't realize what she was saying. This interview did not seem to offer anything in the way of explanations either, so I left it at that and made my exit from their home. Note that there's no follow-up on the diagnosis of Julie Bailey. My other interviews went very similarly, in that I received no information or statements that were not locals talking about the mystery of the cornfields. Agent Nash pointed out that we were close to the location where Annabelle Stevens' car had been found. We decided to spend the remaining daylight trying to find any evidence the local sheriff had not. We drove till we found police caution tape and walked into the cornfield about 50 yards before discovering what can only begrudgingly be referred to as a crop circle. Inside was a heavy depression in the bent stalks of corn that must have been where the car was located. Jessie's car had been discovered the afternoon after her disappearance, some 30 miles away and a good 20 miles from where she said she would be. Annabelle's car was found with a twisted frame and a deep impression in the front left side, like she'd been traveling at about 55 miles per hour and then struck a tree or deep-rooted fence post. There was a tree stump roughly 5 feet tall that had been converted into a fence post back near our car, but no paint or metal traces could be found on it, and there were no skid marks leading to it. We stepped around the circle looking for anything the police hadn't seen. We were there for almost an hour, and at the moment the sun began to duck behind the trees, I rose from a squatting position at the edge of the corn to tell Nash it was time to leave. I turned and saw him standing at the far curve of the crop circle, his bare hand outstretched. He said, without turning to me, "You know what's strange?" "What?" I asked. "The police didn't notice there's no path through the corn to the crop circle." As I watched, I could have sworn I saw the corn stalks sway and bend ever so slightly toward his outstretched hand, as though they were reaching out to touch him. I understood how easy it was for people to fall into legends and mysteries here, in these little pocket fields, islands separated not by distance, but by thick veils of trees. The wind would swoop and swirl down into one, pulling everything to one spot, and then just suddenly vanish. The light bent and sound contorted, and you could hear the muffled bleat of a sheep 3 fields away, and completely miss the question of a person standing right next to you. These little places were perfect for late-night drug deals, for hidden meth labs in forgotten trailer homes, or for the adventures of privileged teenagers. First, this is a very improper form. Second, in her pontificating, I think Michelle missed that Nash had a point. Why is there no path from the road to the clearing? How many people would it take to lift that car 50 yards and shuffle through corn stalks? As we drove back to the hotel, we found something that tickled Agent Nash. A completely innocent sign at the end of the dirt road advertising a zoo in peeling purple paint. Interesting. Note to go back and look that up. Agent Nash suggested we go further into the corn to look at what we could only assume from the decor on the sign was a butterfly garden of some kind. I suggested to Agent Nash that we continue back to the Super 8 and take an aspirin, which was the plan we went for on this evening. The next day, we examined the remains of the 2 cars the police had recovered. Annabelle's had, as I stated, suffered some kind of crash. However, Jessie's was perfectly preserved on the outside, minus the typical wear and tear one would find on a 2002 Toyota Camry. The inside, however, looked like somebody had staged a cockfight between 2 rabid badgers. The upholstery was shredded, and the ceiling liner hung in jagged curtains of fabric. There was no blood, very little particulate matter. In fact, if it hadn't been torn to bits, it would have been uniquely clean for a 2002 Toyota Camry. The only evidence the police thought to collect from the outside of the vehicle was to photograph a collection of fine paint scratches that spread outward from the open window on the driver's side door. Surprisingly, when I tried to roll the window up, I found the window was gone. I asked the detective on the case, thinking it may have been removed to process as evidence, but he assured me the window simply wasn't there when they found the car. That missing window had not been part of the description of the car, and no fragments of broken glass had been found inside. Only one piece of evidence had been removed: a single, crisp leaf from a cornstalk. The car belonging to Ryan Bates still has not been recovered. After thoroughly searching the area and doing the necessary forensics investigation, it is my belief that what we have here are 3 runaway teenagers, looking to shroud their delinquency in local legend, a brand new sheriff eager to do his best, which, while admirable, borders on paranoia, and some very superstitious locals that struggle to tell the difference between standard adolescent behavior, crime, and some sort of monster that is eating children. We are currently assisting the Sheriff's Department in putting out a missing persons report before closing the FBI's involvement in this case, as it does not fall under our purview and seems to be a straightforward runaway case. See attached. Case number 79-KC-7987, Agent Simon Nash. Full interview notes with locals. Photos of cars and area of disappearances. Photo of the corn leaf recovered from beneath the accelerator of Jesse Howard's car. Forensics reports. Note: we did not encounter any light-based phenomena during our investigation. Just corn. I'm troubled at Agent Sanchez's complete lack of concern for 3 17-year-olds. I've seen this before from the Kansas City office. It's like the area thinks you're an adult if you can drive. Also, while I don't like to criticize the work of another agent, pontificating about the reasons people believe local legends is something for criminal analysts, theory papers, and Lifetime TV specials with names like Home Country Killin'. This report lacks interviews with parents and doesn't detail the previous text conversation other than the last message from Annabelle. It doesn't even mention to who the text was made in the preliminary report. I'll dig through the attachments and see. There's something else that's strange. The detail about the zoo sign. It sounds weird, but I'm sure I've seen that sign somewhere, and I've never been anywhere near Southwest Missouri. Maybe it was in another file. I'm gonna go look. McKayla Kespar, September 17th, 8:39 p.m. I don't know how this is possible. It makes little to no sense, but I found it. I found the sign. I dug through some old files and I found it. It's so old, though. I just don't... Case file 44-CO-0002. Date opened June 18th, 1936. Incident date June 5th, 1936. Location Lee County, South Carolina. Witness anonymous. Recording agent Archie Beauregard, HQ. The Bureau received a letter, plainly scrawled on June 18th, informing us of a ruckus going on in Lee County, South Carolina. Agent Russell and I were assigned, as the subject matter tickled the director. If there had been, as the letter suggested, a gathering of white men in a local field on a moonlit night, the director wanted that investigated, as it was more possible than not that it was a rally of white robes and unlawful rhetoric. If it was also that rally was interrupted by all manner of hoopin' and hollerin', as the letter described, and the rally fell to pieces as a slimy monster rose up out of the nearby scape or swamp to disrupt said gathering, well, the director wanted that looked at too. And maybe, if we found said monster, we could give it a pat on the back. We arrived fully expecting that we would find the usual tight-lipped community. This is the third civil rights case I've investigated, one under the BOI and one since the new commission. And I grew up around Savannah, so I know how people down here are. Everybody is either scared of the Klan, of the men in it, or they agree with them publicly, or they're secretly part of the Klan, or they think the Klan is right. It's the last ones you have to look out for. The ones that'll smile and nod, and offer you pie, and look the other way, and feel grateful when a young man of color gets hassled by the sheriff's eldest boy and his 3 friends. So when we arrived to find people a little more talkative about the night of June 5th, well, I was mighty surprised. Now, nobody would go on and say why there were 30-odd men gathered in a field that night, but they do talk about those 30-odd men running like frightened school children to the welcome apron of a governess as they skedaddled to their cars and headed for the hills. They talked about the thing, the creature, and it was easy enough to see that it was a hoax. Local barbershop owner, Emmett Turing, said the creature in question was a good 7 foot tall, covered from head to toe in slime and scale. That when the creature, after causing a horrible commotion, rose up out of the swamp, it ran straight toward the glowing fire the men had started. This, of course, would make little sense if it were an animal, which would be scared away by the fire. Deli owner Benjamin P. Johnson said that the creature, which he also described as scaly, like an upright alligator, plunged toward the group, threw one man into a cypress tree like he'd been hoisted by a block and tackle. Then it went for one man, who pulled a pistol and shot the creature, causing it to stop for a moment, before pulling the pistol from his hand and bending the gun into an angle. It went for him but was interrupted by a frightened horse that was too near the gunshot, and the creature began tussling with the horse. Okay. Tussling, alright. Tussling. Betsy Locke, a waitress at the deli, said the creature was more like a bear, that it killed the horse, then went after the fleeing men. Ulysses Woodruff, a busboy at the diner, said the creature had long fangs and was only stopped from killing the men because it had stopped to sate its incredible bloodlust, then drank the horse dry as jerky. Piggly Wiggly cashier Jim Loss, whose father is the county sheriff, said that after attacking the horse, the creature charged at an oncoming car, ripping the side mirror off before grabbing onto the bumper and pulling the bumper clean off the vehicle. Roy Loss, sheriff, said the whole thing was something dreamed up by the locals telling ghost stories. He said if there was a 7-foot lizard man living in the scape or swamp, somebody would have seen it before now. I reckon he's right, so I looked into any local disappearances. Reportedly, 2 hired hands encountered something referred to as a lizard man while coming back from a fishing trip 20 years before. One of the men, Dox Parks, was never seen again, and his friend, Horace White, was charged by an all-white jury and sentenced to death for the murder of his friend. During the Civil War, Confederate soldiers trying to intercept Union forces on the way to Fort Wagner reportedly lost 3 men and 2 horses in the night under the full moon, and something they called the Demon was stopped only after they created a firing line and 20 men unleashed 180 rounds into the dark over the course of a few minutes. These 2 events, both local legends, would be enough of a good source for a few well-intentioned men to put on a charade to spook some fearful old men gathering around torches and reading parts of the Bible they think they understand. Alma Thorne, a resident of these parts, said that her mother had told her legends of the creature, but if you kept quiet and didn't bother at none, it'd pay you no mind. We sat on her porch while she poured me a glass of tea and said ruckus answers ruckus. The recurring story of a horse being killed by the creature did strike up an interest. Russell and I followed up and found that nobody in particular was missing a horse, though we did find one creature with 4 deep claw marks across its flank, and that it had recently been returned to a farmer by the name of Greeley. The claw marks looked something not unlike a bear or mountain lion, and though they are rare, they are not impossible creatures to see in this area. We took photographs of the site of the rally for the lab to develop. It is obvious from the footprints in the soft loam that 30-odd persons, men by the looks of the boot prints, had gathered, lit a fire, and that there had been the presence of horses, and they had all taken off with great haste. We could find no signs of a beast, though the evidence could have easily been lost in the commotion. We did get a few more reports of sightings while we were in the town. They continued up till July the 4th. For the first time in 24 years, the town's various celebrations ended well before dark and people receded into their homes. We never heard nor saw the creature, and over the next 2 weeks, there were not a single sighting. We left on July 18th. I am confident that the situation was either a hoax with some local in costume and a friend with a bullhorn, or perhaps a bear or big cat down from the hills covered in swamp muck, and that the superstitious locals would rather believe some legend of a scaly man than admit a simple black bear got them all a-tremblin'. Attached. Photographs of the field in which the event took place and the 2 roads leading to it. There it is! Between the hokey way they used to write these things and the completely nonchalant way Agent Beauregard talks about the KKK, the photo, in all its sepia glory. I can't tell the color, but I can just visualize it, the way Michelle Sanchez described it. Peeling purple paint, the outline of a butterfly, and one word. Zoo. But how? This is in South Carolina. And to make it more confusing, I found something else on my search. A drawing, in purple marker, of that butterfly, but from a case in Los Angeles. Case file 276-LA-7955. Date opened July 10th, 1981. Incident date July 9th, 1981. Location Mount Olympus Drive, Los Angeles, California. Witness Monica Lassou. Recording agent Marguerite Delgado. Local police contacted FBI agents at 9:13 on the morning of July 10th. As first agent on the scene, I can report that I have never in my life seen an LAPD officer more visibly upset. Officer Martin Dawes reported his partner, Officer Peter White, had potentially contaminated the scene by vomiting inside the residence, and outside on the porch, and outside in the bushes, and on the sidewalk, and the street. I noted and entered the home. LAPD had already cleared the site in the 45 minutes it took us to respond. Early inspection of the location revealed the following. 1. The entire downstairs was covered in blood. Entryway, living room, dining room, kitchen, downstairs bath, and staircase all were covered in blood so thick it had not fully dried. The furniture, carpets, and counters were so covered I found but maybe 2 places big enough for me to place my hand without touching blood. Even the back of the couch in the living room had been heavily splattered. 2. On the dining room table was stacked 48 kilos of cocaine. These packages, likely smuggled from across the border, were also covered in blood. 3. Roughly 180,000 American dollars in cash was in plain sight, stacked on a table in the middle of the kitchen, also covered in blood. 4. The entire ceiling looked as if it had been quickly cooked in a flash fire, and smelled like it had, for a moment, been consumed with great heat and flame, but there were no signs as to its cause, or that it had spread, or been extinguished. 5. 4 bodies were littered about the downstairs, 3 men and 1 woman. They all suffered multiple lacerations, many deep, and each had at least 1 deep gut wound and 1 deep neck wound. Our initial assessment was cut short by the noise upstairs. I had been informed that there was a potential witness, but that the officers had been unable to remove her from the house. When they discovered her balled up in the corner of an upstairs closet, she screamed for 8 straight minutes and refused medical attention even though she was covered in blood. I directed agents to remove the girl and get her to medical attention by force. The upstairs seemed largely ignored, except for a trail of bloody footprints that led from the downstairs up to the room and into the closet where the woman had been found, and another to an upstairs window. Crime scene analysis early findings found that there were 2 sets of naked footprints, one belonging to the survivor and one belonging to a larger man. These footprints featured toes, but no prints were recoverable. They confirmed a fire, but no accelerant. They also confirmed that all downstairs doors and windows had been locked, and that the prints on those locks corresponded with the dead members of the house. The only open window was upstairs, and a trail of bloody footprints with unsalvageable toe prints led to it, out to the roof, and then disappeared. The survivor, Monica LeSue, offered little information. She said that all she remembered was coming downstairs after hearing the screaming to find a man sitting at the table, drinking from a teacup. He wore white, of a leathery texture, and when he looked up at her, she saw his nose had been cut off and healed over. She could identify nothing else other than when he noticed her, she recalled seeing blue flames. After more than an hour of coaxing, it took 3 officers and 2 agents to pull her out of the house. She was taken to Olympia Medical Center. Identifying the victims took less time than expected given the mutilation. These 4 were identified as members of the Kings of Olympus gang: Victor Espinosa, Martis Sanchez, Raul Bravo, and Queen Zeus herself, Inez Manuel Herrera. These 4 had active warrants for several instances of drug trafficking, street violence, gun violence, and assaults. Update, July 15, 1981. Forensics analysis has come back with some very interesting information. 1. All victims were almost completely exsanguinated. The attack was done to spread blood as the goal. The cuts on their bodies were targeted, starting with large arteries in the extremities so that the victims would have increasingly lower chances of defending themselves. Then, as the attacks went on, strikes closer to their core caused the victim's cardiovascular system to pump blood more efficiently into the room. By the last few blows, the attacker was beating the blood out of the victims. 2. The weapon used appears to be 2 sets of brass knuckles, fixed with blades close in size and shape to grizzly bear claws. They are extremely sharp and seem to be composed of silver or stainless steel, but there are very few traces of particles from the blade. However, keratin proteins were found in the wounds consistent with the structure found in fingernails. 3. The wielder was precise. Very little damage was done to the building or furniture that could be attributed to the intruder. 4. No accelerant was used for the fire that toasted the ceiling of the ground floor. 5. There appeared to be strips of snake-like skin present throughout several locations of the house, but no snake or terrarium. We have yet to identify the animal, but it does appear to be albino based upon the skin. 6. Firearms were discharged at least 48 times within the house. We do not know for sure if all of these discharges took place during the attack, but witnesses reported hearing at least 27 shots. 7. At least 2 persons have come forward to make statements about seeing a man on the roof. Their statements are attached, both of which have descriptions corroborating Monica LeSue's statement. Caucasian, wearing white, tight-fitting clothing, small or no nose. One saw the invader for a moment. The other, who was admittedly inebriated, saw the man jump to the roof of the house across the street and then leap from there to the next row of houses. Update, July 21st, 1981. Monica LeSue has been admitted to Camarillo State Mental Hospital by order of her acting physician. She continually fears that the suspect will return and has told at least one psychologist that she saw him outside her window. The psychologist dismissed this as she was on the 4th story. 2. Monica LeSue's medical chart does include the photos attached. Photos depict the attempts to heal deep lacerations in her abdomen that spell the name Jack, the only physical wound she received in the attack. Update, July 29th, 1981. No new information has been uncovered. No new witnesses or forensic evidence. Supporting agents are being reassigned to Laurel Canyon. Update, October 20th, 1981. Monica LeSue has gone missing from Camarillo State Mental Hospital. Her last few days, she told on-site staff that she felt at peace, that a new man had appeared, with huge red eyes, and that he told her he'd keep her safe. Her room was empty, except for the attached drawing she did with markers supplied by the staff. With no remaining witness and no new evidence, and my agents being reassigned to the Wonderland murders, I'm afraid this case has gone cold. Attached to this file: 1. Crime scene photos. 2. Testimonies by Monica LeSue, Jonathan Blake, and Jeremy Lupa. 3. Photos of Monica LeSue's medical recovery. 4. Blood type analysis and forensic analysis of the snake skin discovered at the scene. 5. Copies of Monica LeSue's drawings. Monica, who did you see? Who were these men, either of them? Who promised to protect you, and how could you have known about any of this? Is the purple a coincidence? Is it just a butterfly you happened to draw just in a purple marker? It just happens to be the same exact shape as the one on a purple sign that's in Missouri 30 years later? And how is that exactly like a sign in South Carolina in the 1930s? Each a mystery with a butterfly sign, each decades apart. And what about the cases? Disappearances, mysterious monsters, multiple murders. This isn't Unsolved Mysteries meets Scooby-Doo. This is the FBI. This is McKayla Kespar, September 17th, 2018. Well after business hours, in the basement of the J. Edgar Hoover building. And I don't understand this. Not yet. But I will.
You have been listening to Zoo, Episode 1, I Saw the Sign. Zoo was created by CJ Hausch, Connie Kitts, and Cody Phillips. The voice of McKayla Kespar is Connie Kitts. Original music by Nathan Gandy. If you want to give us money, and please give us money, you can do it at www.patreon.com/zoopodcast. Zoo Fact. Despite its name, the ghost moose of Maine is not a ghost at all. The word ghost implies that a creature is capable of death. Rather, it is a transparent quasi-vertebrate, like an advanced land jellyfish. The ghost moose is venomous. If you are bitten, please immediately treat the wound with maple syrup.
Everybody say their silent prayer to the Piggly Wiggly and let's do this thing.